In the very likely scenario that Anthony Davis takes up his player option and stays with the Los Angeles Lakers, Fred VanVleet would become probably the best player left on the free agent market. And in that case, it's possible that the Raptors lose Fred VanVleet in free agency. So, in the event that happens, who can the Raptors look to in free agency to replace Steady Freddy? Let's get into it. Welcome to Amateur Hour Sports, where we just hit 600 subscribers and we're making a great push for 700 in the last couple of days. Thank you so much to everybody who has been supporting the channel greatly over the last few days. I very much appreciate it. We're on our way to 700 subscribers already. So if you are new to the channel, you like what you see, you like me, you want more Raptors content, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But on to today's topic, Fred VanVleet. He's been a hot topic for Raptors fans, for me on this channel, and it's a big deal. Fred VanVleet is a free agent. He's coming off the best season of his career. This guy is an NBA champion. He's gotten Finals MVP votes. He's gotten Sixth Man of the Year votes. This guy is a baller, and a lot of teams are going to be looking to him to solve any sort of point guard woes that they may have. And Fred VanVleet, who is already an NBA champion, like I said, could be looking at this stage of his career to maybe secure the bag, get a bit of money. And if the Raptors aren't willing to pay him as much as somebody like the New York Knicks, who throw around money for fun, then maybe Fred VanVleet will be playing in a different jersey next season. Now, I think ultimately the Raptors will do what they can to keep Fred VanVleet, but let's say the Knicks offer him $25 million, which is a bit of a stretch for Fred VanVleet. Maybe the Raptors let him walk. Now, what are the options to replace him in the event that happens? Well, truth be told, this is a pretty bad free agent class. There aren't a ton of great free agents available for the Toronto Raptors to take advantage of, especially in the point guard position. Fred VanVleet is the best point guard available in free agency, I think, by a good margin. The second best, the ultimate replacement for Fred VanVleet, if you had to get a point guard in free agency, is Goran Dragic. But 33 years old, coming off a good season. This guy is only 3 years removed of being an all-star. I would love to have Goran Dragic on the team, but how much money can you give a guy who's starting to age? How long can he sustain this good play? You already have Kyle Lowry who's getting up there in age. Do you want to tie your money up in another guy who's getting up there in age? I don't think so. And also, the Miami Heat are ultimately going to resign this guy, I think. He wants to stay in Miami. I think the feeling is mutual with the Heat. Goran Dragic has to look out for his family in this decision. He says he's very happy in Miami, and he wants to be on a contender. The Raptors are that, but Miami Heat are coming off of being in the finals. So Goran Dragic ultimately is probably going to stay in Miami. Another possibility is Mike Conley has the opportunity to have an early termination to his contract with the Utah Jazz. Now, I wouldn't mind having Mike Conley on the team for the experience he brings, the playmaking he brings, the decent scoring. I mean, he's coming off a very bad season with the Utah Jazz, so Mike Conley makes way too much money. So there's no way Mike Conley's going to terminate a contract early when any other contract he gets from another team is going to be worth a lot less, because instead of averaging 21 points per game like 2 seasons ago, last season he averaged 14. Mike Conley knows that he's not getting the money that he's getting right now in the mid-20s. He is not getting that again. So he's going to ride this contract out. There's no way the Raptors are going to be able to convince him to cancel his contract and take a pay cut to come play for them. Other players who are unrestricted, you can look at a guy like Jeff Teague, but Jeff Teague is not getting any younger. He is not what he used to be. I just don't think that makes sense to sign Jeff Teague and take away minutes from guys like Matt Thomas, like Terrence Davis, like Norman Powell. I would just much rather not sign anybody instead of signing Jeff Teague. Another unrestricted free agent. I think this one is interesting. Jordan Clarkson is coming off the most efficient year of his career from a shooting standpoint. He was a great boost for the Utah Jazz when they acquired him from the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think Jordan Clarkson offers a lot of upside on offense. I think he's a good shooter. He can get his points in the paint, shoot the mid-range shot. I think Jordan Clarkson is a guy the Raptors could consider bringing in if Fred VanVleet leaves. I think realistically Jordan Clarkson is looking for about $15, $16, $17 million. That's probably what he's going to get in free agency. I think a lot of teams are going to be looking at this guy as, a bench scorer. Maybe it's a six-man role. I think Jordan Clarkson is a good option to replace Fred VanVleet in free agency. If you don't have full faith in the guard core that we've built up, if Fred VanVleet leaves, I think with the money available, giving some to Jordan Clarkson may not be the worst idea. Again, he's coming off a very efficient year. I think that Nick Nurse is a guy who can get even more out of a player like Jordan Clarkson because of his great shooting. I think this is a guy definitely you could look at as a bench scorer, or even if you want to start him and keep Norm as your sixth man. I think ultimately what you would want to do in this scenario is start Norman Powell with Kyle Lowry, and Jordan Clarkson comes off the bench as your sixth man because of his scoring threat, averaging 15 points per game last season. I would like to see this guy in a Toronto Raptors uniform if Fred VanVleet leaves. This is a great option. In terms of guys who are restricted free agents, though you're probably not going to really get any of them, you can look at Chris Dunn. Chris Dunn is a good defender. He got the most all-defense team votes of anybody who didn't make either of the two all-defense teams. So, there's a lot to like about his ability to play defense, but on offense, this guy really, really struggles. And, wouldn't be bad if you get him cheap, just for a bench piece, defense-minded guy, depending on the game, you can throw him in. But ultimately, I think you can just save your money. And again, Chris Dunn is a restricted free agent, so Chicago can just match any offer there. And I feel like Billy Donovan will want to try to use this guy and get more out of him on offense because being the new coach wants to kind of push these young guys like Chris Dunn. I feel like he'll want to keep him. Now, another restricted free agent is Bogdan Bogdanovic, a very good shooting guard who was ended up starting ahead of Buddy Hield near the end of the season for the Sacramento Kings. Again, this is a restricted free agent. Sacramento have a bit of money problems, especially paying Harrison Barnes like $22 million. But I think the Sacramento Kings would match an offer sheet sent Bogdan Bogdanovic's way. But, with a lot of young guys coming up, like Bagley, like Fox, you're going to have to start paying a lot of these guys on your team with this young core. So can you afford to keep Bogdan? I think they can for next season. If they have an issue, they can just trade on somewhere. I don't think Bogdan will leave in free agency. So ultimately, there isn't really a point guard or shooting guard replacement for Fred VanVleet in free agency. So if you want to look at other positions, maybe you can strengthen in free agency because you have the money if Fred VanVleet leaves. I think a good piece to offer money to, maybe Danilo Gallinari. He's coming off a decent season for OKC. He could be a nice bench piece at the 3 or 4 positions. Maybe if Pascal Siakam's struggling, you can get Gallinari in a little bit just so you can still have some firepower and not having to force Siakam to get points like you did in the playoffs. I don't think Siakam is going to turn back to that state, but it'd be nice to have a backup if you can get him for a decent amount of money, let's say $16-17 million. Wouldn't be a bad contract for maybe 2 years plus a team option, maybe 3 years, but there's probably other teams looking at him, so maybe that's not the best case. Also, another free agent, Joe Harris, who I think is a very good player for contending teams, just for his shooting ability, and he's not bad on defense, a really good 3-and-D guy you can have, very good at shooting the 3. I think that Joe Harris is a great player to have for contending rosters just to be able to hit those threes, but the Raptors have a guy like Matt Thomas, and if you can get more out of him on defense, then maybe you don't need that 3-point threat like Joe Harris. So basically, you've heard me talk a lot about the options available if Fred VanVleet leaves, and they're underwhelming to say the least. Ultimately, I think the Raptors will keep Fred VanVleet, but you got to look at the possibility of a team like the New York Knicks giving this guy the bag, giving him $25 million, which I think is a bit too much for Fred VanVleet. I'm happy to give him probably $22, maybe $23 million a year max. I don't think you should go over that. I think it would hurt the team. Undersized guard. Look, I love Fred VanVleet, but undersized guard, maybe in a playoff series you'll see him struggle a little bit because of that, but I think there's a lot of great things that Fred VanVleet does on offense, and there's a ton of great things he does on defense. He fits the way the Raptors play so well. It would be a huge loss to lose him. But again, if a team comes in offering those big bucks that we don't want to match, you got to look at who can replace him. And I think the best decision, nobody. Just replace within. Move Norman Powell into the starting 5 to play with Kyle Lowry. Use Terrence Davis in more minutes. Bring him off the bench. And use a guy like Matt Thomas a little more. Make sure that he's working on his defense. And I know they're probably already doing that because Matt Thomas, over the course of last season, just got exponentially better at defense. I'm hearing that Matt Thomas is also bulking up this offseason to make himself more equipped to be a defender. I think the Raptors should just replace with it if Fred VanVleet leaves. Fred leaves, get Serge Ibaka back, save your money for the next offseason when there is a great free agent class to be had. Guys like Giannis are available, and we know the Raptors are gunning to get him in that free agency and bringing him to Toronto to be that huge threat on offense and on defense. That would be huge. Don't need to spend all this money this offseason. The team is still in place. There's these players still here, even if Fred VanVleet leaves. There's, a bit of panic, but confidence in what we already have. I have that for sure. I have confidence in Norm. I have confidence in TD2, and I also have confidence in Matt Thomas. I think the big thing the Raptors need to look for in this free agency is a backup center. If you get Serge, you need to give him a backup. But that's if we get Serge. I think we need a nice tandem of centers who can just rotate minutes with each other. Maybe one is a stretch. You can play a bit at the 4 if you want to give Pascal Siakam a bit of a rest during the game. I think if you get Serge, the big thing you need to get is a backup for him. I'm happy with the guards that the Toronto Raptors have, and maybe with their draft pick, they've done some great scouting and can find another point guard or shooting guard to come in and join that rotation if Fred VanVleet leaves. There's a lot of options to do in the draft. I think the Raptors should look for guard play, or maybe even a guy who can play as a 3-4. I would be the happiest with a guard out of the NBA entry draft. So ultimately, we'll see how things play out. I think at the end of the day, Fred is going to be a Toronto Raptor next season, but in the emergency scenario where he is not, we have to be prepared. And this is exactly what I'm trying to do here. Who can the Raptors prepare to sign if Fred VanVleet leaves? Maybe they're talking to guys already. Maybe they're not. Maybe they have full faith in Fred VanVleet to stay. I don't know. But let me know. Let me know who you think is the best replacement for Fred VanVleet in free agency if he does happen to sign elsewhere. Let me know in the comments down below your opinion on that. But that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you're still here, please like the video if you like, and subscribe to Amateur Hour Sports for more content just like this. NBA content with a focus on the Toronto Raptors 4 days a week on the channel. Hit that notification bell as well to stay up to date with all those videos. Thank you so much for 600 subscribers. We are looking to get 700 in the very near future. If you like what you see, make sure you keep it locked by subscribing to the channel. At the end of the day, I believe what I say. If you disagree, that is okay. We'll see you again next time for another video.